G'day, my name's Tomo and welcome to another episode of Tomo's Tune-Ups. On this episode, we are talking about the Malpassi Filter King Adjustable Fuel Pressure Regulator. So, first two questions. What's an adjustable fuel pressure regulator and why do we need it? Well, an adjustable fuel pressure regulator does exactly as the name says. It enables you to regulate the fuel pressure with an adjustment. So, why do we need it? Well, let's get into that in just 1 second. So, in the box, you get the fuel pressure regulator, and you get a couple of brackets, nuts, washers, and some bolts. That's to enable you to mount it to the vehicle. There are two different types of fuel pressure regulators. This one, for instance, is the glass bowl type. This is the more expensive one out of the two, but it is quite retro because it has the glass bowl there, which enables you to see not only the fuel that's in there, what color the fuel is, and more importantly, any sediment that sits at the bottom of the fuel bowl. So that's from the tank when you're pouring fuel in. If you have any rust or sediment at the bottom, it's going to come through here, which means it's sitting in here rather than inside your engine. Now, the second type is exactly the same, except it has an alloy casing down the bottom. So instead of being able to see through it, it's exactly the same as the color up the top here. So that's the real difference between the two. There's nothing else really other than just physical appearance. Now, this one does not have a provision for a fuel pressure gauge. On this car behind me, we are going to be fitting this to this vehicle. So you can see that in another episode above me over my shoulder. So why do we need it to be adjustable? Well, let's have a chat about fuel pressure. So first things we need to know is the car electronic fuel injection or is it carburetor? Now, in this case, this is a low pressure adjustable fuel pressure regulator. You can get high pressure adjustable fuel pressure regulators, but it depends on the application. In our application, we are running a low pressure pump that doesn't generate any more than probably about 5 to 10 psi. So it is something that we really need to be careful of when choosing the right fuel pressure regulator to suit the fuel system. If you're doing high pressure or even direct injection vehicles, you probably need something that is able to handle more pressure than what this one is. So depending on the application, you need to choose the right one accordingly. Now, this car behind me, it runs an electric fuel pump. So as I said, it runs between about 5 to 10 psi. So this helps us fine tune the exact pressure that we need going into the engine. Now, why do we need it to be adjustable? Well, a couple of reasons. One, it's either going to apply too much pressure or it's going to not supply enough. So let's have a chat about if it supplies too much fuel. So if it supplies too much, it's going to cause the vehicle to run rich, meaning it's getting more fuel than what it needs air. It's going to foul the plugs, it's going to run really rough, it's going to be hard to start. Worst case scenario, you're going to ball wash the cylinders, meaning you got to strip the engine back down, completely rebuild it, and it's going to cost you a ton of money. Now, if it is adjustable, but you have too little fuel pressure, you're not going to be getting the right amount of fuel in there, so it's going to be running super lean, which means you're getting more air and less fuel. It's also going to cause the engine to run hot, possibly overheat, and once again, do internal damage to the engine. So that's why it's important to make sure that you get one that is adjustable. Now, these run in both electric fuel pumps as well as mechanical fuel pumps. This is the inlet just here, the one that comes directly up. So this is coming directly from the fuel tank. This one here is the outlet. That goes directly to the carburetor. Now, what you need to do is connect it up. So you have your inlet from your fuel tank, and then you have the outlet that goes to the carburetor. You also need to run a fuel pressure gauge to ensure that you correctly set the fuel pressure according to the vehicle. So in our case, we are going to be running a fuel pressure gauge. I bought this one just from Autobarn because it is quite cheap, and they are very affordable, but you do need a T-piece to be able to run it. Make sure as well, Tomo's tech tip quickly, you need to make sure that you put thread tape on all the fittings, otherwise it's going to leak. Now, they are only threaded fittings, not actual standard barb type fittings like these. So what we need to do is put the fuel pressure gauge on the outlet of the fuel pressure regulator. If you run it on this side, you're going to be reading the pressure directly from the fuel pump. What we want to be doing is running it on the outlet directly to the carburetor. That way we know how much fuel pressure is coming out of it. If it's too much, we simply loosen this nut and then make the adjustment through the top here. Once you've set it to the correct PSI, and in our case it's going to be 3 PSI of fuel pressure, you then set. You don't need to leave the fuel pressure gauge there at all times. You can choose to remove it, or alternatively, if you want to look cool, retro, you can leave it in there. Guys, make sure you check out the full range at minisport.com.au, as well as the episode on eggs in which we install this fuel pressure regulator, and we'll see you right here on another episode of Tomo's Tune-Ups.